Greetings, dear friends, and welcome to the Whisper of Fear channel. This is the place where fiction blends with reality, creating genuine, pure horror. A question for you. Do you like these kinds of stories? Answer me right now in the comments. Tell me how old you are and where you've joined this terrifying journey from. Don't forget to become a part of our growing dark family. Subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. Your engagement is a signal that you want more. And now, no half measures. Kill the lights. Immerse yourself in the sound with your headphones. Your journey into the world of horror starts right now. This ancient wardrobe had stood in my room for as long as I could remember. It stuck out from the rest of the decor like a black stain on a pristine white wall. Our apartment was the picture of standard American suburbia. Sleek, light-colored laminate flooring, walls painted a generic, inoffensive gray. And then there was this monstrous dark wood wardrobe, with doors so heavy they felt like slabs of stone. Its most remarkable feature was the brass handles and the ornate plates surrounding them, intricately cast to look like golden branches and leaves. As a kid, I genuinely believed they were made of some precious metal. I have no idea where this thing came from. My parents weren't big on telling stories about our furniture. Maybe it was a relic from my late great-grandmother's estate. Or maybe they just picked it up for a steal at some dusty antique mall. I guess it doesn't really matter. I knew this giant was an eyesore, but I accepted it as part of the background, a permanent fixture, without which the room would feel strangely incomplete. When I was 8, I was jolted awake in the dead of night by a distinct, groaning creak. Not the normal sound of a house settling or wood breathing. This was the sound of a door being deliberately opened. I turned my head on the pillow and saw that the right door was, in fact, slightly ajar, open about the width of my palm. The harsh orange glow of a street lamp cut through my window. In that sliver of darkness, I could see something pale shifting inside. I sat up in bed, squinting. The pale shape resolved into a single, milky eye. Half a face was peering through the crack, pallid and unnaturally smooth, devoid of any living warmth. Above the brow was a faint, almost invisible fuzz, like the down on an old porcelain doll. The eye was bulbous, covered in a filmy, cataract-like membrane. No pupil, no gaze, just a white orb. Below it, I could see the corner of a mouth. Thin lips were stretched into a crooked, gash-like smile. The teeth were yellowish, small and glistening with a faint dampness. The face didn't move. The eye didn't blink. I froze, as if nailed to the mattress. I sat there, trapped, while that horrifying visage stared me down. Then, the door slowly swung shut, the brass latch letting out a soft, metallic clink. A thick, heavy silence filled the air. Only then did I allow myself to carefully lower my head back onto the pillow, pulling the comforter up to my chin, eventually falling into a fitful, exhausted sleep. The next morning, I told my parents everything. They listened, exchanged a look, and decided it was all a bad dream, a standard nightmare that I just needed to shake off. But I argued until I was hoarse, insisting that something was living in my wardrobe. To put an end to it, my dad marched into my room and threw both doors wide open. Inside were just my sweaters, t-shirts, and sneakers on the shelf. He checked the back panel, rummaged behind the clothes. Nothing. Well, where's your monster? I still couldn't believe it was a dream. From then on, I couldn't sleep without a nightlight. That small, warm circle of light seemed to hold the wardrobe doors firmly in place. That naive superstition soon shattered. The nightlight was on, but one night, the hinges groaned again. The right door slid open, and the terrifying half-face appeared in the crack. Again, that pupilless eye, and the thin, twisted smile. The face didn't move, it just watched. I didn't dare scream or call for my parents. I sat up in bed, clutching my comforter, waiting for the wardrobe doors to close. This became a constant in my life. Several times a week, the wardrobe would open at night, and the ghastly half-face would stare out at me. Nothing more, just a silent, unnerving observation. It would last about half an hour. And in the morning, when I looked inside, there was only clothing. Talking to my parents about it proved utterly useless. They decided I was making it up for attention. I tried being clever, asking for a new wardrobe for my birthday. That just annoyed them. Why do you need another one? This one is perfectly fine. So I resigned myself and accepted the nocturnal appearances as a personal problem I just had to endure. Everything changed when we got a roach infestation. Maybe they migrated from a neighbor's apartment or crawled up from the dumpster chute in the building. My mom was obsessively clean, scrubbing everything to a shine, so it was clear the problem came from outside. That night, I sat in bed, waiting. I had learned to sense when the half-face would appear. On those nights, the air in my room grew colder, and the silence became so taut you could almost touch it. The hinges let out a soft groan. The right door slid inward, and the milky eye appeared in the gap. And then, a pale, veiny hand emerged from the darkness. A finger, tipped with a sharp, dirty fingernail, pointed past me. The thin lips twitched almost imperceptibly. I heard a whisper, dry as dead leaves. "Kill it!" My throat went dry with fear. The finger remained pointed. "Go on, kill the roach!" I turned. On the wall near the light switch, a cockroach was wiggling its antennae. Ah, that's what it meant. The voice from the wardrobe whispered, "Give it to me." I couldn't refuse. I crawled on my knees to the wall and squashed the insect against the wallpaper with a trembling finger. There was a dry crunch, like a tiny shell popping. The voice spoke again, softly, almost kindly. "Don't be afraid. Come closer. Give it here." I slid off the bed, my legs like lead weights. I approached the wardrobe. From the crack, an open palm reached out, motionless, as if carved from marble. I dropped the crushed insect onto it. The fingers closed gently, and the hand retracted back into the darkness. The door slowly swung shut. Silence fell again, as if nothing had happened. After that, the face didn't appear for several weeks, but I knew it would return. I waited for it as for something inevitable. And one night, the wardrobe door creaked open again. The familiar ghastly half-face appeared in the slit. I forced myself to get up and walk almost right up to it. "I have something for you," I said, my voice betraying me with a tremble. I held out my small offering. The half-face in the crack seemed surprised. "What?" A matchbox trembled in my hand. "Here, for you." Hands reached out from the darkness and accepted my tribute. When the nocturnal entity opened the box, live cockroaches poured out. The half-face lit up with delight. "Oh, you're a good one." The door immediately slammed shut, and silence returned. I exhaled and sat on the edge of my bed. For this moment, I'd had to hunt insects all over the apartment. I had finally bought myself another couple of peaceful months. That was the price of silence. Pulling off such a trick again proved impossible. The building declared war on the roaches. My mom called every exterminator in the phone book, and a massive chemical assault began. The insects vanished, leaving only a sickly sweet chemical smell that lingered in the air for a long time. When the wardrobe creaked open on another night, I had no supplies left, except for a dead June bug I'd found in a flower pot. It was all I had to offer my half-faced guest. And when my sacrifice was delivered, the white eye suddenly went flat and colorless. The thin lips whispered, "It's all dry, tastes like dust." I replied. "I'm sorry." I thought punishment would follow, but the guest from the wardrobe just said, "Then bring me a mouse." I shook my head in fear. "I don't have any mice." "Yes, you do," the half-face hissed. "They scratch behind the kitchen walls. Can't you hear them? Catch one. Bring it tomorrow." And it retreated into the wardrobe before I could even respond. The next day, I looked under the kitchen sink. It smelled mousy, but there were no rodents to be seen. How was I supposed to catch them if they were hiding? I waited for nightfall with a sense of dread. When the pale face appeared between the brass handles, I had to make excuses. "I haven't caught one yet. I'm sorry." The creature stretched its lips in disappointment and vanished back into the wardrobe. Again, no punishment. That's when it became clear. This wasn't a command, it was a request. But how was I to know what would happen if I didn't fulfill it? I wanted to appease the guest from the wardrobe, to buy peace for a little while longer. The next morning, I rummaged around in the garage, digging through all the boxes of junk until I found an old mousetrap with rusty springs and a metal bar. In secret from my parents, I baited it with a small piece of bologna and carefully slid the trap under the sink. Not 10 minutes had passed before I heard a sharp snap from the kitchen. I jumped up and ran, though part of me thought the mechanism could have triggered on its own. But there it was. A mouse was caught. The metal bar had broken its little gray back. Its thin tail twitched like a thread. Its tiny paws scrambled frantically for a few seconds before the fragile body went still. A hollow feeling opened up in my stomach. I felt like a murderer. How was I supposed to know mousetraps killed so mercilessly? I thought it was just a trap that held them, leaving them unharmed. But soon, that emptiness was filled with a rush of grim satisfaction. Now I had something to settle my debt with the night guest. That night, I could hardly wait for the creature to appear. I fiddled with the edge of the folded newspaper in which I had wrapped my victim. The moment the milky eye showed between the doors, I jumped out of bed. "I did it! Here," I said. A pale hand reached out to accept the gift. The wardrobe slammed shut with violent force. This small sacrifice bought me peace for many months. And so the years passed. I periodically fed the creature, bringing it beetles, catching earthworms and small rodents. Sometimes the thought crossed my mind, what if I just smash this wardrobe to pieces? But I had gotten used to it. The monster in the wardrobe no longer inspired fear. It was like a game with simple rules. You bring sacrifices for peaceful nights and keep your mouth shut. My personal secret. However, as I grew older, I began to lose interest. When I was 15, a thought occurred to me. What's the point of all this? It was around that time the nocturnal half-face made a new request. The white eye appeared from the wardrobe as I was drifting off, and words rustled in the darkness. "Boy, boy, can you bring me a bird?" I had the nerve to ask in return. "And what will you give me?" The creature in the wardrobe exclaimed in surprise. Then, after a moment's thought, asked, "What do you want? Tell me." I hadn't expected that. I could actually ask for something. I wished I'd thought of it sooner. I jumped out of bed, looked without fear into the milky eye, and answered, "I want money." The half-face muttered discontentedly. The lips whispered, "I don't know money. Ask for something you can't just buy." "Then I need to think," I replied. My heart was pounding. This was interesting. Could the night guest really give me something? Think. I immediately remembered the 3 bullies from school. They were always on my case. The main one was a pimply hulk with heavy fists. Brad Jenkins. He always reeked of sweat and cheap cigarettes. Flanking him were his 2 lackeys. One was tall and scrawny, constantly squinting and smirking. The other was shorter, slouched, with perpetually damp palms and fingernails bitten down to the quick. The three of them moved as a single entity. Their tactics were petty and vile. A trip at the top of the stairs. "Hey, watch your step, dumbass." An elbow to the ribs in a crowded hallway. "Oops, my bad." Spitting on my backpack. These creeps had been tormenting me since the 3rd grade. They'd long since started stealing my lunch money. I wasn't exactly afraid of them, but I hated them with a burning passion. I'd always dreamed of smashing their smug faces. That was my biggest desire. I said, I want to be strong. I want to be able to stand up for myself. The milky eye widened. The lips whispered, "You ask for much. Then bring me a person." My hope died. The request seemed impossible. "A person?" I repeated. The half-face nodded. "Yes. If you give me a person, you will be the strongest." "What if I bring one during the day?" I don't know how that question escaped my lips. The words were ahead of my thoughts. But how could I agree to such a thing? "Bring them any time," the creature replied, and the wardrobe slammed shut. I didn't sleep all night. I thought about it. Bring a person? How? If I invited one of those bullies, none of them would ever agree to come to my house. Maybe I could lure them with something, promise them something. It wouldn't work. This was a pointless line of thought. There was this weird kid at our school named Ian, but everyone called him by his last name, Pudley. He chewed on pen caps, talked rapidly, jumping from topic to topic, laughed at his own jokes that no one else understood. A total oddball. Sometimes he'd latch onto me after school. We just walked the same way. I didn't shoo him away. I walked beside him, nodded, sometimes replied. He sensed this and clung to me more than to others. A few days later, right outside my apartment building, I heard myself ask, against my own will, "Hey Pudley, want to come up and play some Xbox?" He jerked his head up, his eyes gleaming. For real? I knew no one was home. Mom was on a double shift. Dad was out of town on business. We entered the building. I hoped no one had seen us. Pudley chattered away while I climbed the stairs, thinking, am I really prepared to sacrifice someone else's life for my own desire? This is wrong. I was just about to turn around and say, let's do it another time, when a sharp, throbbing pain flared in my jaw. A reminder of the punch Brad had landed on my face that morning, just because I happened to cross his path. My heart hammered. I opened the apartment door and let Pudley go in first. The apartment was dead quiet. He made himself at home, dropped his backpack on the floor, kicked off his sneakers, and started looking around. He walked into my room, and his eyes immediately landed on the ancient black monolith. "Whoa, is this your closet?" he asked. I nodded, a cold sweat breaking out all over me. "Yeah, kinda cool," he said, moving closer. "Open it." I managed to squeeze out, my voice barely a whisper. Pudley turned to me, interested. "What's in it?" "You'll see," I said, hoping against hope that nothing would happen. He grabbed the brass handles and pulled. I wanted to scream, "Stop!" But my breath froze in my lungs. The doors flew open, and a pair of bone-white arms shot out and yanked the boy inside. The wardrobe slammed shut. A series of dull, heavy thuds came from within, like sacks of meat being dropped. I bolted into the hallway, clutching my head. The most terrifying part was that Pudley didn't even have time to scream. A moment later, the apartment was as quiet as an empty coffin. Only his backpack by the door and his scattered sneakers remained as proof that it had all really happened. The half-face had taken him for good. I looked later. The wardrobe contained nothing but my clothes. No traces. It shook me so deeply that I walked around like a zombie for days. Words flew past me. Food tasted like cardboard. Life just went on. It didn't stop me from getting rid of the victim's belongings, though. The backpack and sneakers were incinerated in a bonfire behind the auto shops. I waited until everything turned to ash, stirred it with a stick, and covered it with dirt. They searched for Pudley. They put up flyers at the school, pinned a notice in our online group. Everyone was questioned rigorously. I answered, "Haven't seen him, don't know anything." I repeated it so many times the words lost all meaning, but I was being torn apart by guilt. I shouldn't have done it. It felt like I would carry this memory for the rest of my life. But those school bullies snapped me out of my stupor. During a busy passing period in the crowded hallway, Brad Jenkins whistled sharply through the noise. "Hey, Leo, get over here!" I answered on autopilot, not even looking his way. "Screw you." The big guy started moving toward me. "What was that?" "I don't think I heard you right." He suddenly threw a punch, but I caught his wrist. My fingers clenched around it on their own. Stopping his fist was ridiculously easy. And in that moment, I felt like I could drive my fingers through his flesh, right down to the bone. My grip was iron. Brad's face turned red. He held back as long as he could, but finally he let out a high-pitched wail that echoed down the hall. He punched me in the chest with his free hand, but I barely felt it. Panic flashed in his eyes. "Let go, man. Let go of my hand," he pleaded, his voice strained. But first, I wanted him on his knees. A simple twist of his wrist was all it took, and he crashed to the linoleum floor. I looked him right in the eye and said, "You ever come near me again, I'll rip this arm right off. You understand me?" The pimply tough guy looked up at me as if he was seeing someone else. "You understand me?" I repeated. "Yeah, I understand. I get it," he yelled, almost sobbing. His two lackeys stood there, pale, staring in horror at their humiliated leader. Brad hissed through his teeth. "Psycho." They never bothered me again, and I understood. Then it was all worth it. The half-face had granted my wish. It was a fair price. Those three found themselves a new victim. Sometime later, I saw them in the hallway, tossing some kid's backpack over his head while he ran around helplessly, screaming, "Give it back! Give it back!" The scrawny one was egging him on. "Come on, move faster, you turtle! Be a cheetah!" The backpack hit the wall, burst open, and textbooks and papers spilled out. A teacher walked by and didn't even bat an eye. I stood to the side, realizing my hatred for them hadn't gone anywhere. These creeps kept doing whatever they wanted. You can beat them up, but you can't change their nature. Scum will always be scum. That same night, the wardrobe door opened a crack. The half-face peered out from the narrow slit. The creature seemed to sense I had a question. I asked it, "Can you take the ones I hate?" "You have enemies. Bring them," the half-face replied. "I can't bring them here," I said, realizing the logistical and legal nightmare that would cause. The wardrobe dweller chuckled. "Then I'll arrange a meeting. You know the burnt-down house at the end of the street. Take them there." After that conversation, I slept surprisingly soundly. The next day, I found the trio behind the school, smoking in their usual spot, cupping the lit ends in their hands. My heart beat as steady as a metronome. I felt a heavy, cold confidence. "Listen up," I said to them. Brad blew smoke in my direction. "What do you want?" "You know the old burnt-out tailor shop? The one that caught fire last year?" I asked. The scrawny one perked up. "Yeah, so?" "Word is some smugglers are using it as a stash for untaxed cigarettes. Cartons of the good stuff," I said. I'd concocted this story the night before. I knew how to play on their weaknesses. They were always scrounging for smokes. Brad got twitchy when he couldn't get his fix. "A stash? Seriously?" The shorter one huffed. "Dead serious. Whole cases. No tax stamps," I added without blinking. Brad squinted. "You seen it? How do you know?" "My old man saw him. Told me about it. Let's check it out after school. I hoped they'd take the bait, but their leader shook his head. You go yourself, I shrugged. My loss. Their refusal was a letdown. They were just a bunch of pathetic cowards, only brave enough to pick on those weaker than them. They were probably scared of getting mixed up with real criminals. I regretted bringing smugglers into it. I should have made up something simpler. The next day started with shocking news. The school chat was blowing up about a horrible accident. 3 students were dead. They had, after all, gone poking around in that burnt-out building, probably looking for that stash. The roof had collapsed on them. A tragedy for everyone. But not for me. I was glad they were dead, and I didn't feel a shred of remorse. The half-face always keeps its promises. That same night, the wardrobe latch clicked. The monster had come to boast about its handiwork. A faint scent of wet ash and charred wood seemed to emanate from the darkness. Thank you, I said to it. The half-face nodded with satisfaction. And suddenly, a sharp thought pierced me. Nothing in life is free. It tempered my triumph. There's always a price, right? I asked with a spike of anxiety. Closet monster. One day, will you take me? You? Why would I want you? The half-face seemed genuinely baffled. I explained. In all the stories, it's like that. You get your wish, and then you face the consequences. We are not in a story, it whispered. You are my best friend. I help you. You help me. Let's always be together. The door creaked and swung wider. The shadows inside seemed to dissolve. For the first time, I saw it whole, and I understood instantly why it had always shown me only half its face. It didn't have another half. Where the other side should have been was just a void, a wet, dark, empty hole. It was utterly horrifying, and yet it didn't matter one bit. The guest in my wardrobe was more important to me than any human friend, closer than my own mom and dad. If it asked me to sacrifice them, I wouldn't have to think twice. I imagined all the things we could do together, and I answered it. Deal. Let's always be together.